Good morning, all. Can you hear me at the back? If you can, I apologize. Yes, the dog is Matilda Virginia Woolf, named after the Roald Dahl character Matilda, who is strong-willed and a sort of powerful lady, and that's definitely my dog. And Virginia Woolf because, you know, there's never the wrong time for a bad pun. I am indeed Simon Stewart. Thank you very much for that introduction, Marcus. I am SHS96C on Twitter. It looks like my password. Never mind. And I am the lead of the Selenium project, and I have been since, we pushed Selenium 1 like a million years ago. So I'm here to talk to you about Selenium and the State of the Union and how the project is going. We call this talk the State of the Union because a long time ago there was the Selenium project and the WebDriver project, and we merged the two of them, and that was Selenium 2. And it seemed amusing on the first day when we were talking about this, the first presentation, to talk about the State of the Union. And, well, it's never the wrong time for a bad joke, right? So let's kick things off. Deoxyribonucleic acid. I didn't know if I was going to say that. That's good. DNA, as the rest of you may know it. It's a double helix structure composed of molecules of guanine, adenine, cytosine, and thymine, arranged along a sugar phosphate backbone. The sugar phosphate backbone is hydrophilic. The pairs in the middle, hydrophobic, so that's why it does that structure. Today we know exactly what it's for and what it looks like. Like, even if I hadn't written that at the top, you would have seen this and you would have known that instantly, right? It's very familiar to all of us. We're casual about throwing the name around, right? We talk about the DNA of our companies and bits and pieces. And we're careless with our knowledge, right? We just go, oh yeah, no, it's one of those things we know. We've always known it. But we haven't always known it. You know, it's been a long time, right? So DNA. Let me take you back to the Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge in 1953. And these two gentlemen, Crick and Watson. When we talk about the discovery of DNA, these are the two names that we tend to remember, right? In 1953, Crick and Watson published their first articles describing the structure of DNA to the world. And this is a photo of their original model. And you can see something very like it in the Science Museum if you hang around in London after the conference. Well, that's kind of interesting, right? And those are the two names that we think of when we think of DNA. But there's one name that often gets left out. That's the name of Rosalind Franklin. So the initial model proposed by Crick and Watson placed the backbone of the DNA on the inside. So the thing that's attracted to water was on the inside, and the thing that rejected water was on the outside. And that's clearly nonsense, right? If you know anything about molecular chemistry. Do any of you know anything about molecular chemistry? Okay, clearly nonsense, right? And Rosalind Franklin was a very accomplished X-ray crystallographer, and she took one look at this, laughed, and told them they were wrong. And of course, being a lady, they ignored her. And this photo here is known as photo 51, right? And this is the key to cracking the puzzle of DNA. Like, Rosalind Franklin took the best photograph ever of the DNA crystal using X-rays. And it was this photo and the measurements that she took from it that allowed Watson and Crick to solve the problem of DNA and discover it. Now, there is considerable controversy around her involvement. Many people say she was cheated of the credit that she deserved for having made such a fundamental contribution to the discovery of it. There are arguments that she should have been awarded the Nobel Prize, along with Crick and Watson, for their discovery of DNA. Sadly, she died very young, 4 years before the Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery, and they don't tend to do posthumous awards. but the way they got that data is kind of shifty. If you ever want to see like a bit of a murder mystery in the world of science, just read up on the history of the discovery of DNA. It's fascinating stuff. So DNA, don't worry, I'm coming to Selenium. It'll happen eventually. But I do like a little bit of a nerd out first thing in the morning, right? That's what we need. We've all had coffee, right? Just getting the brains going, right? And we're thinking. After 1953, the pieces fell into place pretty quickly. We know now that within each human, there are 46 chromosomes packaged into the cell's nucleus, right? Arranged into like 23 pairs. They're composed of about 6 billion base pairs, all coiled tightly together. If you stretched the DNA in one cell all the way out, it would be about 2 meters long. And your body is composed of billions of these things. If you put all the DNA in all of your cells together, it'd be about twice the diameter of the solar system. That's enormous, right? And packaged in that DNA, the genotype represents the genetic composition of the organism. Right? Each of us are unique. Is anyone here not unique? I'm just checking. Like I expect like a Monty Python, oh, I'm not. Yes, there we go, in the back. Thank you very much. All of us are unique, and our genotypes describe each of us unambiguously. Well, I mean, you know, there's epigenetics, and there's environmental concerns, and there's all sorts of things, right? But our genotype fundamentally describes the basics of who we are, and we share a lot in common, right? But we don't look alike, right? So you can't see someone's genotype, but what you can see is what's known as the phenotype. The phenotype is the physical expression of their genetic characteristics, right? It describes physical form and how an organism develops. Father and son, mother and daughter, 2 siblings share 50% of their DNA, but they look alike because their phenotypes, their genotypes lead to similar phenotypes, right? So, there's obviously an analogy that I'm going to draw here. Some of you may be ahead of me. I see some nodding in the audience. Thank you. Which leads us to punctuated evolution. Right, if you take a look at the fossil record and you go back in time, you don't see a smooth change in genotype. Right? You see one form being present and suddenly it snaps and you get a second form, and then it snaps and you get a third form. Right? And why does that happen? And that happens because we accumulate changes in the genotype and we do experiments. And the genotypes that are leading to changes that are less advantageous don't succeed evolutionarily. And the ones that do succeed are the ones that you see widespread all over the place. And sometimes that leads to a change in the form, and that leads to a change in the fossil record. So, the theory of punctuated evolution applied to testing web browsers. We began way back when, actually not even with handcrafted JS, we had browser simulators. We had things written in Java or .NET or Python or Ruby that simulated a browser. And back in the day, that was good, right? This handcrafted approach. And it kind of worked really well, and people were relatively happy with it, or at least not so wildly unhappy that they realized they were in pain. And then Jason Huggins and some of the original contributors came up with what's known as Selenium Core. And actually, there was a sort of Cambrian explosion of bits and pieces happening at the same time. There were loads of testing frameworks for browser automation, and Selenium was one of them. There was Windmill, there was Wattage, Wattier, some of the original evolutionary approaches where people were like, oh, how do we do this? How do we do this? And Selenium was the one that caught on. Problem was, Selenium was trapped in the JavaScript sandbox, right? And so what we needed to do was accumulate some more changes in the genotype to try some more experiments. And then we had a change in the phenotype when we had Selenium WebDriver. And WebDriver binds closely to the core of the browser and is now, in fact, part of the browser through the W3C process. It's tied tightly to the thing that we use every day. And so we must, by definition, have reached the galaxy brain moment, except we haven't because none of us are really doing unit testing. Like, one of the arguments that we have all the time, people come up to me, they go like, oh, my Selenium tests are slow. It's like, how many have you got? They go, 200, with a big cheesy smile on their face. It's like, 200? Run in fear. It's a terrifying number. You know, I always tell people they should have one. And then, because if you ever say things with nuance, people go like, I don't understand that. So just one. A minimal number. So this is punctuated evolution. Clearly, genes are the source code of our projects. The phenotype are the things you download and which you report bugs on. Right? It's a very stretched and tortured analogy. And there are some lessons we can learn from this stretched and tortured analogy, right? And the first one is progress isn't constant, or it doesn't appear to be constant, right? I'm wearing the T-shirt of SeleniumConf in Japan, which we had in April, months ago, right? And we released the Alpha 1 in Japan, and we have only just released Alpha 3. And if you were to take a look at the APIs offered by Alpha 1 and Alpha 3, basically the same. Well, we have the relative locators that have appeared recently, and that's kind of nice. But from a user's point of view, there hasn't really been much change. We haven't seen like the leap in functionality that we know is coming. And why is that? It's because our genotype, the source code of the project, is accumulating more and more changes as we try and get things sorted out. If you were following the commit history of the project, you would have seen a massive cleanup in our build process and how we do things. You would have seen us shift tooling around like nobody's business. We have completely revamped our build process. It's faster, more efficient, easier to use. You never see that. And you shouldn't ever see that unless you're contributing, right? You don't care about it. But what we're doing is we're making the project fitter and healthier and ready for the next stage in its evolution. Another thing we can learn from the story of DNA and the discovery is that we can learn from each other. Crick and Watson would not have solved the problem of DNA and its structure without the information from Rosalind Franklin. Somebody would have got there eventually. It's inevitable. There was a huge amount of research going on at the time. I think Pauling in the US was also frantically looking for it and may have beaten Watson and Crick if he hadn't gone and done a tour of the US rather than coming to Cambridge. He had that option. But we can learn from each other, right? There's so much to learn. If you take a look at the Selenium source tree, we have this thing in it called the JavaScript atoms. Right? These are common pieces of functionality that are shared by all of the browser implementations. And the atoms came from the original JavaScript code. But not just Selenium's original JavaScript code. There was some from Selenium Core, some from internal frameworks that I was working at Google, some from other projects. Windmill, there was some code, I'm sure. There was some that we had written ourselves in WebDriver, right? The idea of tight binding to a browser that WebDriver personifies and embodies, that wasn't unique. Brett Petticord had beaten us to it with Wartier, right? It bound tightly to the COM interfaces of Internet Explorer. For those of you who don't know, Windows is based on a sort of set of COM, which is a sort of mechanism for emulating object orientation in C. And it works really well. And IE is not so much a web browser as a stack of COM objects put on top of each other wearing a trench coat and pretending to be a web browser. Jim is in the front going, it's true. I should have the Homer slide. It's funny because it's true. But yeah, that idea, that came from Wartier. Relative locators, the new feature that we shipped in Alpha 3, that's not unique. That came originally, the first implementation I saw was in a project called Sahi. And Tycho have an implementation of them, and there's more and more of them appearing. One of the other things that we discussed at the W3C TPAC meeting, which we're going to be landing in Selenium itself, is the idea of bidirectional communication from the browser under test to your local code, right? Now, we could land it and go, yeah, we invented this thing, and that would not be true. We did not invent it. what we have done is we've learned from each other, right? So, there's nothing new under the sun. The thing that is original is how you mix these things together and how you present them to the world. So one thing that we really should do, give credit to people, right? Ideas are cheap. Implementation is super hard. Just ask anyone who's ever, I'm sure we all have ideas how to solve problems in our neighborhood or in the world around us or in the code that we use. The number of times somebody has come up to me and gone, why doesn't Selenium just do this, right? Just is a lethal word. It means it's basically impossible. So, we should say thank you. So, like Jason Huggins, thank you to him. Thank you to Paul Hammond. Thank you to Patrick Lightbody. Thank you to Dan Fabulich. Thank you to all the people who did the initial work to start Selenium. Thank you to Michael Tam and the current committers for all the work they've done. Thank you also to Narayan Raman, who is the guy who created Sahi in ThoughtWorks India, right? He blazed a trail with the idea of the relative locators. It was, a unique concept that came from there. There are so many people who've contributed code to each of the releases. We have an authors file in each of our releases. You can have a look. It's enormous. Hundreds of people. It's phenomenal. And also, thank you to Puppeteer and the Chrome debugging team. It's intensely irritating now that everything is bedded down to suddenly have to go and do a bunch of new work. But it's really exciting. And the thing they've showed us is that there are capabilities that you all want to use in your testing that we should have made available, and we are now scrambling to figure out, how do we do that? But without that kick, we wouldn't be doing it, right? This is evolution in action. Something has come in, we are now changing. We are modifying the genotype, the phenotype of our project to be better, right? And a better fit for the problems you have to solve. And that can only be a good thing. That can only be a good thing, right? Yeah, I hope so. Or terrible, right? Maybe it's the worst thing in the world. But there is one more lesson that I think we need to take away from all of this, right? One important thing that we need to remember, right? And that is the state of discourse in our industry and in web testing in general, right? Selenium got as far as it did because we worked with everyone, right? We didn't slam the Wartier guys because it's fight to the death. Of course not. We welcomed them with open arms and we collaborated and we had a chat with them. And some of the things that they did gave us insight into how we should improve things. Jason, when he was running Selenium, could have said, no, don't care about this WebDriver thing. This is the right way to go. But because we collaborated and talked, we merged the problems. We merged the projects and we solved the problem, right? And the problem is the thing that we're trying to solve. We don't care how we do it. And it may be because I am an old man with grey in my hair and rose-tinted glasses looking at the past, and nostalgia isn't what it used to be. But I'm pretty sure things have got worse recently, and that worries me. There's a denial of science, right? We've always said Selenium is a library for browser automation, right? And we've explored that domain in great depth. You could have come to any SeleniumConf on any year, and you would have found talks about how to make your tests more stable and more reliable. You would have found talks about how to make your locators absolutely rock solid. You would have found mechanisms for doing reporting and integrating with tool chains. You would have found ways, patterns to explore making your tests more maintainable, right? We've spent a long time exploring this space and laying out these ideas, right? And they're there for you to find. You can go out onto the internet, quick Google, you'll find a page object, screenplay pattern, mechanisms for making locators work. We've got documentation about how you can extend the various bits and pieces. And the other thing is we've also spent a long time encouraging you not to use the tool. The reason why I got backing when I was at Google for doing work on Selenium and WebDriver is because one of the directors heard me talking to one of the teams and encouraging them not to use WebDriver. It's like, this is wrong, you're doing the wrong thing. And yet, you know, we reached for it. And I guess that's kind of sad, right? Because it means that we have a reliance on gut feeling. Sad puppy. Don't rely on gut feeling. It's an important signal, right? It tells you something. But we spend a lot of time being told that, you know, Selenium is awful. How many of you work at a company where somebody has gone, the Selenium tests are terrible? The end-to-end tests are, yes, right? They're really unstable. They never pass. Oh, the end-to-end test build is red. It doesn't matter. It does that. You know, just not true. Like, we know how to write stable tests. We know how to write stable locators. We know how to solve a lot of these problems. I'm not saying it's trivial. Absolutely is not. That's why we get paid to solve problems. But we know how to do it, and we know the techniques to make sure our continuous pipeline is green. And yet, you talk to people, they go, it's terrible. Oh, it's awful. It's rubbish. They're slow. I can't make it go any faster. It's the cheesy quote, which I'm sure we've all seen before. Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not his own facts. Right? Like, hey, yeah, you can say, like, this thing is rubbish, but you can't show it isn't rubbish, right? You can have that opinion, and you're welcome to hold it, but it's not necessarily backed up by the facts on the ground. There isn't a wider metaphor about modern British politics in this talk. Although we are terribly close to the Houses of Parliament, so if you want to protest later. Some examples, right, of things where there has been discourse, where it's been not ideal, and the lessons that we can learn. First one from our own home. We landed relative locators. They are really nifty, right? Like, they could have been written 10 years ago, because basically all they're doing is injecting a bit of JavaScript, and the JavaScript is trivial to write. And the problem is that the way we've done it is we've added it as what we call an atom, right? And the atoms weigh in, when you compile them, they're pretty large, right? 44 kilobytes, I think, is the size of this particular atom. So every time you do find element, off goes 44 kilobytes, and back comes a response, right? And the browser has to process 44 kilobytes of raw, compressed JavaScript, and comes back, and it goes, yeah, I didn't find anything. There are perfectly valid concerns about the amount of data that is being sent. And one of the initial problems that people had within the project with the relative locators is like, it's too much data. If somebody is using Source Labs, this is going to make their tests super slow. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. Therefore, relative locators are pointless. I was like, wait a second. Wait a second. Like, I have spent a significant amount of time making these things work. The JavaScript is trivial, but it's been a long time since I've written JavaScript, and I had to hook it into the compiler, I had to flow it through, and then I had to do the language bindings, and then I had to think about it, and then I had to popularize it, and then I had to compare it with prior art, and la-da-da, blah, blah, blah. And writing a feature is a hell of a lot of hard work. And the thing is, these are going to be super valuable. Like, being able to talk about like where something is on the page visually, it's going to be so useful to so many of our users, because so many of our users are not really deeply familiar with the internal structure of the DOM, but they can say this is clearly above that. Right? We have lowered the bar, we've made it simpler for people to use this tool. It's valuable. But the pushback was, you know, pretty upsetting, I'll be honest, because I have a very thin skin after 20 years in open source. So the lesson that I took away is be gentle with each other. Remember, projects are made of people, right? When you have criticism, it's fine. Say, It's a perfectly valid complaint to go like, you know what, this is an awful lot of code that's being sent across the wire. Can we do something about that? And the answer is yes, we are going to do something about it. We have introduced a new feature in the W3C of script pinning, which should make this a lot cheaper, right? Like we are iterating on it. And the person who complained was perfectly correct in saying that there has to be a better way of doing this. And there is. But when you're saying something is bad, also think about why it was written, right? And the person on the other end receiving that, because it's a human being. I love this cat. In Turkey and South Africa, advertising laws, I understand, mean that when you're doing an advert, you can't mention your competitors, which is fascinating, right? Saying how bad other people are. There's so much advertising we see nowadays, right? And so many blog posts and so many comments, right? Thing X is terrible. Thing Y is awesome. Thing X doesn't do this. Thing Y, thing X doesn't integrate with that, right? There was a post recently by a company that had sponsored SeleniumConf going, oh, Selenium is terrible. We're breaking up with it. And I was like, hang on a second. None of this is fair. None of this is right. This is appealing to gut instinct rather than actual facts. Misrepresenting someone or something to gain an edge is cynical and unhelpful. And yet we see it all the time. What can we do instead? Build on your strengths. Explain why your solution is better. When we're talking about some of the changes we're making, we're not saying everything is awful because it doesn't have relative locators. We're saying, actually, relative locators are going to be really useful. The stuff we're putting in to make your builds, your Selenium server, more traceable, so you can hook it up to tools like Honeycomb or Jaeger and figure out like what the heck has happened once a request leaves your machine. Like, that's really good, right? And when you're talking to people, when you're encouraging people to do things, the right thing to do is to talk about what you're proud of. Like what makes your tool, what makes your approach, what makes your idea better. Not what makes things worse, what makes things terrible. Because when you do that, you're in a race to the bottom and literally no one is happy. And remember, nobody sets out to do a bad job. On this slide, for those of you who are following at home or can't see, the sign says turn left, and the arrow points to the right. I am pretty sure the poor person doing the road markings didn't set out and go like, you know what? Actually, they might have, because that is hilarious. But nobody sets out to do a bad job, right? We hear talks by people from projects such as Puppeteer in Cyprus, right? And they talk about how unstable Selenium tests are and how awful they are and how slow they are, right? And it turns out that as more people use their products, as more people use Puppeteer, for example, they're running into the same problems we solved years ago, right? They're adding explicit weights. I've seen so many Stack Overflow posts saying, the element is on the page, but it's not visible yet, and so when I click it, it doesn't work. It's like, literally, there's a whole chunk of spec about, like, wait until the element is interactable, right? Because that's exactly the problem that you run into. I mean, it's adorable, but it's a little bit frustrating. And the thing is, if instead of replicating all the work we'd done 10 years ago, people were like, and here's a new thing that you can do, a new capability. And there are amazing capabilities in these tools. Right? You can hook in, like the bidirectional thing means you can have a mutation observer, observe what's happening on the page, and it's like, oh, fantastic, now I can do a weighting that it wasn't possible to do. You can stub out network requests, and so you can introduce a new mechanism for providing stability. Now, you could have done it using a proxy in Selenium, and Jim has written long blog posts about that. But, having it wired into the tool itself is a really nice feature, right? Like, that's fantastic. Like, talk about that stuff. Because that's better. And then steal all the good stuff that we have in our project and in the W3C spec, so that ultimately people writing web tests can write the best web tests they can. That would be good, right? It's not a zero-sum game what we're doing, right? As a developer, you have a range of tools to use. Sometimes it's appropriate to use Selenium. Sometimes it's appropriate to use Jasmine. It is never appropriate to use TestNG. I joke. There are cases, right? I mean, TestNG has the categorization features, which are really nice, right? And it would be quite nice if JUnit had those out of the box. Like, no one tool solves every problem. Some of them solve many problems simultaneously, and that's good. But, no one tool solves any problem completely, right? And so you take a look at your toolbox and you pull out the tool that is most appropriate to the problem you're trying to solve. That's great. You might use Puppeteer and Selenium in your test. Shock, horror. I don't know. You could do all sorts of things, right? It isn't a zero-sum game. It isn't actually a game, right? Like, I think at the first SeleniumConf, Jason Huggins presented some data going, having Selenium on your resume, on your CV, earn you $20,000 more every year, right? SeleniumConf, there are people who have built their careers off the back of browser automation and testing, right? There are very successful companies that have done this. Source Labs, in particular, like just to pick a name out of the blue, I don't know. Thank you for sponsoring. Richard Bradshaw tweeted recently that he's really excited about coming here because his journey on his career path started partly at SeleniumConf. Like, people that build their careers, right? When you are slagging something off, when you are tearing something down, like, people have built their careers on Cypress, and they're building their careers on Puppeteer, they're building their careers on TestNG, they're building their careers on everything, right? To pull something down and tear it, I hate Java. Just petulant and childish. So yes, there we go. Sorry, I'll stop hectoring you now. Thank you very much for listening. Now, roadmap. Woo! More Selenium content. What are we doing? Quite often I get requests for, when are you going to ship Selenium 4? It's like, well, when it's ready. Like, one of the nice things about being an open source project is you ship when you're done, you don't ship to a timeline, right? But there are things that we're doing. There are markers on the road so you can track what's happening. First one, the alphas, right? We've done alpha 3. And what we're doing is we're slowly adding more capabilities and more features, right? You may not see it, but we are merging the code bases from the old Selenium grid and the old Selenium standalone server and the old RC server, and we're mashing them into one relatively attractive whole. And we're adding capabilities like distributed tracing, and we're adding things like the relative locators. And we're doing things like switching our network stack, and we're doing all sorts of things, right? User-facing, the APIs, the tooling is pretty good. If you've used it before, it continues to work. You can drop in an alpha right now and start providing feedback, provided you're just providing feedback on the client side, right? Should all be good. I realize I just should all over myself, and that's somewhat unpleasant. There are some changes coming in IDE, as well as Selenium Grid, right? I think Tomer is speaking at some point. He will probably cover some of this, but Applitools have been working super hard to make sure that the next version of IDE is going to be amazing. They're moving it to Electron, which is really cool, because it allows you to do some of that capabilities of hooking into the browser to make recording tests a bit easier. They'll post a blog and a roadmap soon, and a design for people to critique. And they'd really like we would really like as a project, for people to get involved. Right, now is the time to go like, oh, I don't like this bit, or I could change this. IDE code export is available, but it's also available as an API for you to extend. So if your favorite language, I don't know, Elixir, isn't supported, now's the time to jump in. If you're using Selenium, like files and bugs on the new features, Angie Jones did a blog post about the new relative locators and found an issue, and we're going to fix that. And grid, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And CDP, loads of changes. Once we've got the alphas out, once we've got the basic functionality out and we think it's OK, we'll do a handful of betas. We'll push it out. We'll make sure the language bindings have all the features supported. It'll be nice. We'll be feature complete. And so I'm expecting that beta period to be pretty short. And then sometime before Chinese New Year, I'm not sure which year, we will ship 4.0. If you've been paying attention, you see it's getting towards dawn. Now we have daylight. It's not a great joke, sorry. And we're going to get faster with a bit of help, right? Now is the time to get involved with the project, because now is the time where everything is in flux. And there are workshops on Wednesday where we are going to cover a bunch of this stuff. So you can learn how to use the tool more effectively, but there's also Fix a Bug, Become a Committer, where we actually fix a bug. And we have actually had committers join us there. After we ship Selenium 4, so many options. I'm a book nerd. Like, I love books. And this sets my teeth on edge, because it's like, there's no way I will ever have time to read all this. There are so many options available for us as a project for things that we could do, right? And things for you to get involved. Fit and finish. The raw APIs are pretty good. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's not bad. Fit and finish is something that needs to be done. We need like tooling to go, oh, look, here's an easy way to integrate the proxies, like Jim's blog post. Here's how you can make writing extended, new locators easier. Here's how you can do this. Here's how you can do that. Like all the rough edges. Who here has to download a version of Gecko or Gecko Driver or Firefox and try and keep them in sync, and it's a pain in the backside? Yeah, there are nods in the audience. One brave person raises their hands. Right, fit and finish. Like in the Java world WebDriver Manager, there's equivalent tools everywhere. But maybe it would be nice if they were part of the core project. New technical stack. People have an irrational dislike of the Java virtual machine for some inexplicable reason. Maybe a new technical stack is what's needed. Like we will have distributed things. It'll be easy to pull out bits and pieces, rewrite it, plug it back in. Maybe that's what we do. Documentation. Like, oh. I'll leave it at that, because it makes me a little bit weepy. Diego has been working particularly hard to help land a whole bunch of changes. Like, we have new docs coming, but now is a great time to get involved with that. Broader cloud support, like the re-architecture of Selenium that's coming, makes it really easy to hook into AWS, GCP, Azure, whatever on-premises solution you have. Like, it's, so many options, right? And reflections, it's really one reflection, right? And that's rough edges are the gateway to contribution. Like when I started doing open source, Joe Walnes, a friend of mine, said, like, okay, there's one thing you need to do if you ever want a successful open source project. He said, make the APIs as good as they can be, because the edge of your system is a bit that is hardest to change. And then do, and I'm going to swear here, a really shitty implementation in the middle. And somebody will be so incensed that they will come in and they will tidy it up for you. And then you have a committer. And then do it again and again. I can assure you, the internals of Selenium were kind of shit. Jim got sucked into maintaining the IE driver because the C code was so appalling that upon review, a Googler went, how does this even compile? And then I've learned something about C that I never wanted to know after spending a week trying to figure out like how it worked. Jim comes along and goes like, I'm no C++ expert, but this appears to work. And it's like, thank you. Sort of ran off into the distance. And the other reflection, the other lesson I've learned is Rumi quote. Rumi, the philosopher. Raise your words, not your voice. It's rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Don't be angry at people all the time. Don't be furious. Don't go, this is terrible, this is awful. There are so many things where actually just saying, hey, look, have you thought about this? Can we do this? What about this? Here's a contribution I'd like to make. Like, very seldom do we say no to a contribution. We sometimes say, this is the kind of approach we're taking, this is the way we're going, would you mind changing it? But I don't think we've ever really said no categorically to something. Be gentle with each other, right? Speak softly. Carry a big stick. Things WebDriver is older than. Edge. Edgium. The new Chromium rewrite. That's kind of fun. Chrome. We shipped the first version of Selenium 2 before Chrome even existed. I mean, it may have existed, but it wasn't available to the public. I was actually one of the beta testers of the Linux version inside Google, and I very clearly remember the day where it rendered everything upside down. They did the Australian release. It was like, hang on. So there's Chrome. Current job, my past job before that. I've had many jobs. WebDriver is older than those. I got married after I started working on WebDriver. So, WebDriver is older than that. And people say that WebDriver is my first child, and they're absolutely correct, because my son is 5 years younger than the project. It's kind of interesting, kind of shameful. I mean, I'm very fond of him. But I shipped WebDriver first. I don't know, do you ship babies? You know what I mean. He's adorable, by the way. I was speaking to him this morning. He goes, do you know what I'm doing? He says, are you talking to lots of people? I go, yes. And he goes, oh. It's like, thanks, son. Keeps me grounded, right? So the first push of code that I did was 2007, 3rd of January. I was sitting on my sofa drinking a glass of red wine, and I thought, this will be done in 6 months. I'm an engineer. I'm standing by my estimate. It is wildly, wildly incorrect. I'm kind of tired, right? I've been doing this since 2006. It was the first time I wrote code that actually we shipped. This is my puppy. This is Matilda Virginia Woolf. She's so adorable. But I've been doing Selenium for a long time, right? And I'm kind of tired. And so Selenium 4 is going to be my last release. After this, I step back. Project happens. We'll see what occurs. So that's going to be fun. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on who you are, it takes us a really long time to ship anything. But Selenium 4.0 will be my last release. What happens afterwards? Don't really know. It's going to be exciting, right? I do know that strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. You're in London, right? I'm allowed to quote Monty Python at you. I couldn't find a picture of a lady raising a sword, so there's a sparkler for you. Who's going to lead the project? Who's going to figure out what we're going to do? I don't know. Like, it would be nice if I had the answer. What I do know is that there are some amazing people involved with this project and have been for a long time. We have an amazing steering committee. Right? We have people with energy and vigor throwing code in incredibly rapidly. Like, one reason I have to step down is because Alexei is catching me up in the number of commits, and it would be shameful if I was still meant to be leading the project as he overtook me. I don't know what's going to happen. But the nice thing is, the things that I am really good at, starting things and going, here's a brave new world that we should be, not brave new world, here's a brave new direction we should be heading in. Here's what we should do. Like, I'm a great starter. Anyone who's worked with me will guaranteed tell you I am a terrible finisher. I don't dot T's and cross I's. no, hang on, that's wrong. That's exactly the point, right? Like, I'm terrible at this game. I'm really good at going, yay, big thing, let's do this. And then when we get to 80%, I go like, oh, it works. Like, I'm not a detail person. Nor am I very good at fit and finish, like, or documentation. I speak a lot, I tweet, but I don't write down things very often because I'm not organized enough to do that, right? I'm not very good at going, hey, what would people need? Because I just think it's trivial, and I go, oh, I just write it myself. Like, somebody with a different mindset is probably needed. And I have one great fear for the project, which is when I joined Facebook all those years ago and I became super busy, the project kind of stalled for a bit. And maybe I should have stood down then and let someone else take over. But the average length of time that somebody works for an IT company in the Western world is somewhere between 2 and 3 years. Right? Facebook, there's a 4-year vesting cliff, where at 4 years, you get all the stock you got when you joined, and there are people who leave straight away, right? Attrition is super high in IT companies. I've been working on this since 2007. There are other people who've been involved with the project for almost as long. Like Jim, I think you were 2009. Alexi's been on for 4 or 5 years now. Pardon? 11 years. The other thing people will tell you is I have absolutely no memory. Have I told you how bad my memory is? Like, the people who we even think of as new in the project have been around for years, right? Like, by rights, if we were a company, most of those people would be leaving. And my great fear is that as people go like, I am kind of tired now, there won't be fresh blood coming through. JavaScript bindings, JSON label, one person. IDE, Toma and Dave, both employed by Applitools and working on that because of their grace, like hanging by a thread. Java bindings, Alexia and myself. Ruby is probably healthiest. There's like 3 people. Python, kind of dicey, right? We need help. And this is your project. Like, you've come to a conference. Clearly, you use this. You can do with a hand. So as I reach the end of my allotted time, in every sense of the phrase, I'm not going to die. I'm just leaving. I'm going to ship 4 and then go, hey, bye-bye. One last thought. Does anyone remember Wild Stallions from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So the Bill and Ted rule, I think, is the rule that we should all be following as we move together into the future. And the Bill and Ted rule by Bill S. Preston and Ted Theodore Logan is be excellent to each other. So I hope in this conference, and as you leave the conference and go out and you're playing with Selenium and you're working with the people around you, that you are excellent to each other. You've been excellent to me. Thank you very much for your time.